From tornadoes to hurricanes, blizzards, and everything in between, you're listening to the Stormfront Freaks podcast. The Stormfront Freaks are former television meteorologist Mark Massaro, atmospheric science graduate and Skywarn storm spotter Brady Harris, digital meteorologist and weather producer on the Weather Channel app Dina Knightley, former on-camera meteorologist at the Weather Channel Kim Cunningham, and I'm your announcer and Skywarn network coordinator Mark Johnson. Now, here's the moderator of the Stormfront Freaks podcast, Skywarn storm spotter and chaser Phil Johnson.
Hey, welcome everybody to the most entertaining weather podcast on your listening and viewing device. Yes, this is the Stormfront Freaks podcast. It's brought to you by Extreme Tornado Tours. They're the world's most popular storm chase tour company and the exclusive chase tour of the Stormfront Freaks. The 2020 schedule is going online and the seats will fill up fast. So, freaks, you guys got to make sure you jump on that right away. You can visit extremetornadotours.com for more details. If you are a first-time listener, God help you, but thank you. Definitely thanks for stopping by. Be sure to go to stormfrontfreaks.com because you can then access our library of all of our previous shows and famous guests from the weather industry like Severe Studios owner Corey Hartman and Zoom Radar's Jeff Biradelli, to just name a couple of them. But this is episode 76. And we've got Minnesota Twins Baseball Meteorologist, among other things. Mace Michaels is joining us tonight. So we're looking forward to chatting with Mace. We'll be playing our lightning round game and asking the question of the week, which is kind of relevant right now. Is the Weather Channel responsible for storm chaser Corbin Jager's death? There's a big lawsuit on that right now. But we also have our exclusive tracker chat and tornado track segments. And we'll finish, of course, with some of our hashtag weather fools. But before we get to all of that, it's always happy hour when we record, and the best way to introduce our co-hosts and their voices and to let you know we like to have a lot of fun and be laid back here is to find out what everybody's drinking. So I'm going to start with our intern this spring who's joining us, Morgan Clark. She is a senior studying atmospheric sciences and communications at Ohio State University. So I have two questions for you, Morgan.
Yes.
The first question is, what are you drinking tonight?
So tonight I'm drinking Brewdog's 5 a.m. Saint. It is an American amber. Love Brewdog.
Ooh, nice.
That
Very
is
nice.
my stuff.
So here's my second question then. So we talked last episode, you teased us in saying that there was a couple grad schools that you've been accepted to, but you hadn't decided. And if I'm correct, one of them was Wisconsin.
Yes.
And the other one was?
Colorado State.
Colorado State. So you are going to do a special reveal tonight.
Yes.
So here's the thing. So it's also an audio podcast. So you have to show us because you have a hat to don, but you have to also tell us while you're donning the hat. Go. The stage is yours.
I got a hat. I got a hat to do in the old what's it called, like a sports thing.
So you recruit. Yep, you're a recruit.
Recruit.
Choosing your decision. It's the decision.
So for those listening, I have a dark green hat that says Rams.
Yeah.
Colorado State. Congratulations.
I committed today. Yes. I bought the hat specifically for this.
So quick, tell us why. So why'd you choose Colorado State?
Well, they have a great atmospheric science program, and I applied for the communications program, the public communication technology program, and I met somebody at the AMS this year that also studies communication technology and is interested in science communication within the meteorological community. So that kind of encouraged me to apply there, and I chose, got accepted. I was a little worried there for a second, but
congratulations.
I got in. I heard when I was in Europe. Yep.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you didn't say because of the marijuana.
Yeah.
Well, Maz, that's what you would say. You mentioned that before. All right, we're moving on. MJ, what are you drinking tonight?
Hey, I had a leftover Irish harp in the refrigerator from St. Patrick's Day, so there we go.
The leftovers are always good because you never know what you're gonna get. It's like a grab bag. All right, Maz, what are you drinking tonight?
All right, I got my Stormfront Freaks cup.
Ooh.
It's turned blue, which means it's cold. There's something cold in it. Can you guess?
I'm going to guess water because you're
Yeah,
teasing
because
us.
it's still Lent. Exactly. Drinking the
Oh,
LaCroix.
that's right.
I was
That's
going to
right.
say LaCroix. Ooh.
You do
Lightning
too?
round.
You
I've
would have
got
gotten
it.
the correct answer
I've
on
got
that.
tangerine right there.
And,
Yep.
and I did. I'm going to go to our guest, Mace, because he found out we do have a green room. But what did you pull out of the virtual green room tonight?
I'm not that exciting. I just have some sparkling water, Ice Mountain.
Yes.
So I had LaCroix in the other room, but I wanted to go with lime flavor.
all right.
Oh,
With the
Yes.
lime flavor.
special. All right, well, let's do this. Let's just get to our guest, Maz. I'm going to turn it over to you.
By the way, good job. You still have time to run and grab the LaCroix if you need to. Just
I
to
do?
let you know.
Okay. If I run out of this, I will.
It's a long intro. I mean, it's like 6 minutes. So anyway.
Okay.
All right. Hey, so Mace Michaels, meteorologist for the Minnesota Twins, Weather Nation, Severe Studios, you name it, he's probably done it. He's a meteorologist, and for 30 years in broadcasting, has taken him all across the Midwest and the South. His first TV meteorology job was in Wausau, Wisconsin. So there was a plug for Wisconsin there, Morgan, just saying. Followed by stops in Grand Rapids, where he and I were competition, just to let you know. Fort Myers, Florida, Tampa, Florida, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and then across the country on Weather Nation. Welcome, Mace.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so where was that the proper order?
That was even the proper order. Yes.
How come you look so much younger than me? We were in Michigan about the same time, man.
I don't know. Good question. I started young. How's that? I started real young.
Yeah, like age 6. All right. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Right.
There you go.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, my quick question, I wanted to find out a little bit. So you currently working with Severe Studios. As I mentioned earlier, we've had Corey Hartman on the show in the past. What's
Was that
your
a
role
nice long interview, by the way? Or, was Corey concise?
Corey was in his car. Listen, he was in his car with his family.
Oh, of course.
So he was actually doing his interview with his family and kids in the back seat. And I think I remember chicken nuggets. So I don't know if the kids were eating chicken nuggets or if he was. But
Phil, it sounds like he wants a longer intro. With a bachelor's degree in meteorology from the University of North Dakota, Mace is also an AMS certified broadcast meteorologist and winner of 2 regional Emmy Awards for hurricane and winter storm coverage. You want me to do more?
There we go. That was good.
I could come up with more.
So I just want to know this. So what do you do for Severe Studios? What's your role with Corey and his company?
I really don't do much on the chasing side. A couple of years ago, we were approached by a company here in Minneapolis that's actually offshoot of the Twins. The Polag company owns some broadcast stations, and they were looking at starting up. They had a news network and a sports network. They wanted to add the weather element to that. So we started doing radio for a bunch of stations. Corey and I worked together at what was the leftovers of Weather Nation. Weather Nation moved from Minneapolis, went out to Denver, and the company that was still here, he and I still worked for at the time. So when we got the radio side going, that's how I joined Severe Studios in that way, kind of merged in together. And we still forecast for about 20 radio stations here across Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, North Dakota.
And so you're forecasting for them? Is then that's your job? And then doing some cuts, radio cuts?
What we do is we do cuts that we upload. A lot of the stations we're on are automated, or they recorded, some type of voice tracking things that go on. So they insert our weather in there throughout the day. And then we have temperature mentions on there. The magic of the server can take our voice and put in the current temperature and mesh it all together so it sounds live. So we're kind of giving those radio stations frequent weather updates all throughout the day.
I always thought Severe Studios was strictly on the chasing side of things and providing obviously video and brokering a lot of that. But
Corey had a broadcast background long before the chasing started. So this was kind of the arm of getting that finally going for himself.
Cool.
So how are the Twins looking?
Good right now. We're 4-1.
Good. Yes.
Yes.
Wait, right now.
Yeah, well, in Minnesota, that's what we always say.
Yeah.
Last year we had 78 wins. The year before that, we made the playoffs. So that's why we'll say right now. I'll be optimistic.
That's right. I was born in Minnesota.
Oh, really?
Serious?
Oh, yeah, sure. Wow. You betcha.
Oh,
yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah. I know. I lost the accent, though, but it comes back. Just to let you know. So if you're forecasting, tell me, how does that go? Are you forecasting leading up to it days in advance? Are you forecasting also day of? When does it start? How do you do it all?
Oh, for the radio stations?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
for the Twins.
For the Twins. Okay.
Yeah.
For the Twins. Yeah. The Twins is generally, it's a short-term thing. we're looking at pretty much what they're concerned about. I mean, when's the rain going to move in? When's it going to end? Temperature, yes, we talk about it, and that's a concern with the grounds crew. I work mainly with the grounds crew. So those are the folks that are asking me the questions when we get into a rain situation or some type of other weather that's going to be a problem. That's when the management of the Twins get involved as well. So I'm spending a lot of time on GR radar, radar scope radar. We have a couple of different, just in case one data or vendor goes down, we have another one just in case, looking at both the terminal Doppler and also, of course, MPX, about everything we can look at to get a good idea of timing, when it'll start, when it'll stop, and of course, plenty of time on the HRRR and any other short-term models as well to do the best I can to get an idea of when it's coming through.
Have you had to call a game yet? Like, hey, this isn't good. Or what's the worst event that you've had weather-wise there for a game?
I've had a few too many that I had to call. We started about 3 years ago. The original meteorologist with the Twins, when they opened the stadium, the outdoor stadium, that's when they moved away from the Metrodome, was in 2010. And that was Craig Edwards. He was the chief out, MIC, out at MPX for years and years. Or I think when it was even MSP, and then they went out to MPX. So when he retired from the government and NWS, he still did some part-time radio for NPR, approached the Twins. They were like, great idea. We know we will need help with weather. And that's how the program sort of grew. He retired a couple of years ago. I contacted the Twins along with another meteorologist, Todd Nelson, who I also worked with out at Corey at the Leftovers of Weather Nation. And we both end up doing the forecasting now. And it's going pretty well. But that first year was tough. I think I had 15, 16 days where if we didn't have some type of direct problem, we had a rain delay or a rain out. I mean, not all 15, 16 were I worried, but there was something on the radar and I was sitting there parked in front of it most of the night.
Any evacuations or
no evacuations? We've had some thunderstorms where we pulled everybody up out of the stands, and of course the players took shelter. But my worst case probably was, well, I'll give you the plus and the minus. In the first week that I started, we had a good chance of rain coming in, but the way the models were moving it in, we had kind of a northeasterly flow. So I felt it was going to knock down the rain and give us enough time to get in a couple innings. We ended up getting in 6.5. It was against the Brewers. Twins were ahead. We called the end of it. So that was a plus in the weather department. We got a win. And also I timed out when the rain was going to move in. A week later, similar situation, but it was rain moving up from the south. We had a northeast flow. All of the models were moving the rain in before game time. The South Metro was raining, and the lovely northeast flow and the dry wind. So we called the game based off of what we were seeing on the forecast and the radar. The actual raindrops didn't get downtown till about 9:30. Now, it was a raw night at 40 degrees, so who would have wanted to been outside? But we could have got a game in. So that was kind of a tough one.
So now you got to talk about your worst, like, man, I totally blew that one.
Well, that one was kind of, because it was after having a good one, but probably the one that snuck up on me. We had severe storms up by Mille Lacs Lake, and they were rolling east, and we looked good, no problems, and they decided to dive south as they became severe, and nothing really had them moving that way. And with about an hour and a half, we had the line progressing at us. But it lost a little of the mean flow as it got closer into the Twin Cities and started to oscillate in the North Metro. I don't remember the exact synoptic setup, but we must have had some type of stationary boundary in there as well. And it kind of oscillated on the boundary. So we ended up getting an extra half hour to where it was raining up on 494, which is about 3-4 miles, the northern loop of the Twin Cities. It would come down real close to the Metro. We could see the lightning, the dark clouds. And then it kind of backed off and oscillated back up. So I'm looking one exit, two exits up from us at the tower cams and the DOT cameras, and it's just pouring, and we're still dry at the stadium. But the whole problem there was at 6 o'clock, I was like, oh, wow, here we come with severe weather possibilities and thunderstorms. And at 5 o'clock, when everybody's asking me, I'm like, no, it looks like it's going to stay north. The watch boxes are up north. The mean flow looks generally westerly, but surface conditions took over and it dove southeast.
So if you're seeing lightning,
yeah,
I know you're thinking the same thing. At what point in time are you like, hey guys? You know?
Yeah, I'm going to throw in here, Maz. I was on Carolina Weather Group, and I think Mace, you were with them
yes.
a few weeks ago, and I think you talked a little bit about the lightning issue, and I did want to ask you about that. What what your role is in that, and what you do with that.
Sure. MLB does not have an official lightning standard. So it's not like the NCAA where...
That is crazy, by the way.
Yes.
They don't have a standard. It's surprising, but they don't have one. So I'm not as concerned about the Lightning from a playing standpoint as we are for a facility standpoint. So yes, the Twins management folks are down there right away talking to me and, asking me about where the Lightning is. When's the Lightning going to move in? What am I seeing? But from an MLB standpoint, that's really not as much of a concern. Now, obviously, if we're getting strikes close and around the station, it's a different case, or a station. You can tell I'm used to TV. In and around the stadium, it's obviously a concern, and we would be worried about it. But there's not a Lightning standard in MLB.
Little League has a Lightning.
So do you follow anything then, Mace? Do you follow anything at all? Where if there's a lightning strike within 1 mile, or is that left up to the umpires once the game is started to make that decision?
Once the game is started, it is completely the umpire's call on whether we stop things or not.
Wow.
That
People
is
with
not
no weather knowledge at all. And
they make the decision.
What about are you as far as radar and things of that nature? Are you sharing any of that with them in between innings, or letting them know, hey, there's something coming right now, just so you're aware? Are you sharing that, or anybody from the grounds crew sharing that information?
Exactly. Larry DeVito, he's the head of the grounds crew. He's always sitting as close as you can get to home plate with the way the stadium is shaped off of the side of the third base dugout. So he is sitting there ready to answer questions for them at any time. If there's stuff going on in between innings, he runs out there, lets them know what I'm seeing on the radar, when I think it's going to move in. And then as it gets close, half the time I'm yelling down the hallway to another person of the grounds crew, and then who yells it up to Larry, so we can let the umpires know in between bats if and when something's going to move in. So we're letting them know as much as possible.
So you still leave the lightning strike. That's still left up to the umpires to decide if they're going to call the game and you ask fans to seek shelter, or do you still let the game go on if they haven't called it yet, but do you guys do any kind of video board information to the fans to maybe let them know to seek shelter even though the game might still be going on?
With the Twins folks that are down there with me, Dave Horsman, he's in charge completely of what goes on in the stadium at the time. Matt Hoy is usually talking with the umpires before the game and then also concerns with that. They are always asking me, where's the closest lightning strike? They get alerts on their phone as well. DTN's one of the providers we use, and that gives them the lightning alerts.
Sure, yep.
So they're asking me, hey, Mace, I'm seeing lightning here. What do you think? And so I'm letting them know. But it's the umpire who makes the decision of when we stop the game.
Have you noticed changes from umpires to umpires where some might call it within a certain distance and others are willing to wait longer?
All crews are different. Every umpire behind home plate, it's the crew chief, but usually it's the umpire behind home plate that has the most influence. But the crew chief does make the decision, and they'll decide when to pull things off. So it's completely discretion of the person who's in charge that night.
And go ahead, Mass.
I was going to say, do you at least ask the umpire to go stand on the pitcher's mound so he's a little bit higher up from where he is? Because I'm like, that's got to be the lowest place in the whole stadium to look or to see from.
From a rain standpoint, they are, if the pitchers are complaining about the problems on the mound, if we're not dealing with lightning, they're concerned about that. But when it comes to the lightning side, they see and hear it, and we let them know, but they make the decision on when to make a pause in the game.
And I've read, Masor, is this the case that the Twins are the only team in Major League Baseball that actually employ a meteorologist?
On staff at the stadium, yes. A couple of the other teams have consulting meteorologists, or they consult with a company. I believe the Royals had a meteorologist, and they consult with a company. Some use AccuWeather or DTN. I can't think of what WeatherBug's main forecasting arm is right now, but they're used as well. And MLB contracts with them as well, too. So MLB's consulting with them as much as talking to us with what we're seeing going on there. But yeah, we're the only one who have somebody at every game, every home game.
Which to me is crazy, at least for the outdoor parks. And so my question is, has there been any discussion amongst those that are involved with each of the teams from a meteorological level? Have you been talking about, hey, developing standards, or hey, we should start doing something? I mean, has there been any talk about changes to what the current situation is, which is having no plan?
Not that I am aware of. That would be beyond me. I'm not in those type of discussions. I hear things about them talking about and setting standards, but nothing with me directly. We have our target field evacuation plan and our standards that we would do there. And you asked about notifying up on the board and also making announcements. And yes, we're doing that during or as the storms are approaching.
So I've got a lot of these questions because I work with an NCAA Division I athletic department,
Okay.
and of course our standard is 8 miles. 8 miles lightning strike. Everything is stopped for 30 minutes. There is no activity, and if there's another lightning strike within 8 miles during that 30 minutes, it resets the clock for another 30 minutes. We had a football game here in the last fall, 2018. Where our game was delayed 3 hours because it was just we'd get a lightning strike, and then they actually at one point came back out for probably 3 minutes, and then bam, there was another lightning strike and they went back to the locker room, and so to me, that's the direction things are going. It's just surprising that a professional level sporting event, especially like baseball, because and MJ's talked about this as well of little league stuff, where it's parents are running this stuff, and they'll just keep playing, because their role model is Major League Baseball, where heck, it's hailing, who cares, let's still keep playing the game if we need to, as long as the field's not an issue. And
I'm pretty sure high school here has a standard in Minnesota, and I know Iowa did when I worked there, and it's the same thing. It's a 30-minute type thing. I don't know the distance, but I know it's 30 minutes after the last strike, like you were saying.
I called a little league game once because the umpires, they had 6 games back to back. All the the dugouts are all right there together, and it was a situation where I'm like going, I cannot. Who's going to be calling this here? No, I'm like, that's it. I'm stepping up, and I'm like, coach, get over here. Umpire, come here for a second, because they're like, what the heck? And I'm like, look at radar. We got lightning right here. You got kids. What are you going to do? And they called it. But it was my kids were there. That's why. That's part of the reason why
they wouldn't have done that. So, do you see anything changing in the future, or what's going to change the future, Mace?
I don't see anything changing as in a hardcore rule right now, and I don't know what would make that change. That's, again, beyond me, and we have had some discussions, but in the office amongst us, but it's usually we're more concerned about what's going on at target field specifically. Every team is, again, different. Obviously, if you're out in San Diego, you're not worried about thunderstorms nearly as often, but in Florida, I can think of the Marlins a few years ago. All they have is the grounds crew, head groundskeeper with radar on his app. I don't even know what radar he was using, and he made... he thought it was going to be okay, and of course, sea breeze came in and it started pouring on him, and there was lightning all around. There was a game the Twins had in Texas a couple of years ago, and there was thunderstorms as well. I believe severe weather around, was it Houston or Dallas? I can't. It would have been Dallas because Houston's indoors. So it was Dallas, and lightning strike, bam, everyone scurried. But there wasn't any rain up to that point in time. They knew there were thunderstorms around. There was severe weather to the south, and you had a lightning strike really close by. I think that was like 4 or 5 years ago. It was when I was working on Weather Nation, and we ran the video.
Are you doing away games too, or just home, or how does that
work?
Home.
Just home. Yep, just home. I do the Monday through Thursday, and Todd does Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Huh. So do you feel like all of your TV experience leading up to that led you to be, I could do this. I can pinpoint it down to 100 yards.
TV preparing me for the crap I would get from the management. Yes. But when it came to the micro scale side, what really helped me was those years working in Florida. Everything in Florida, if you've been down there or if you've ever watched the radar evolve for a number of time or ever worked down there, everything moves so slowly. So you really get to watch things develop, and you get to really see, when things are developing, be it the sea breeze itself, outflows, thunderstorms colliding, cell mergers, everything we see up here with severe weather up north, but it happens so much slower down there that it really helped to prepare me for here to get me up to speed and get ready for it. So I can't say it was TV that helped, but it indirectly helped. How's
it
that?
helps psychologically, maybe, right?
It helped psychologically, again, from all the tough times I get from the guys when it's sunny and great. The management folks, Matt always says to me, "You're stealing money from me." And then the next thing, he walks in and yells at me when we've got rain the next night. So I can't win.
Yeah, you're what do they say? Overpaid 99% of the time, underpaid
Yes.
1% of the time.
He has said that just specifically, yes.
All right, well, hey, I tell you what, you guys, you all have your favorite go-to weather app, right? You know, there's tons of choices out there. You'd have to ask yourself, why would anyone make another weather app? Well, if you try Atmosphere Weather, believe me, you're going to understand why. Because Atmosphere Weather, it's an all presenting. It's all about presenting the forecast in a true at-a-glance daily view, and it's pretty ingenious how they arrange the weather forecast around this 24-hour clock. It makes it so much easier to read the forecast. You add calendar events to track the weather with your upcoming plans. You got to try this to believe it. Download Atmosphere Weather now on iOS and Android. There's a full-featured free trial. Then it turns into a basic free version if you want once the trial's over. Just search Atmosphere Weather in your app store or visit atmosphereweather.com. Hey, we're going to take a short break. Go ahead and refill your drink and check out Tracker Chat with the Tornado Trackers. They're discussing part 2 of the tornado events that shaped them. Go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to Tracker Chat, the podcast within a podcast. We are the Tornado Trackers. My name is Jeremy Heyman, and I am joined by my chasing partners, Gabe Cox and Jeff Mangum. Over the next few weeks, we are talking about the tornado events that shaped us in our youth. This week, Gabe Cox is going to let us in on the tornado event that shaped his life. Take it away, Gabe.
All right, so I had the unfortunate luck of growing up in Maine, which is a beautiful state unless you love severe weather. So most of my tornado experiences as a kid were watching the news. So it was funny meeting Jeff 8 years ago, first moving to Austin, Texas, and realizing that this little town called Jarrell is just north of Austin, and then meeting Jeff, who actually chased that day, because Jarrell was one of those news stories that I watched as a kid and was just completely blown away. I had already been obsessed with tornadoes, but I had never seen something that was so entirely and thoroughly destructive. It took what was already an obsession and just kind of took it to the next level. Like, how can something like that come out of a cloud? It just blew my mind as a kid. And then a couple years later, I was watching the Weather Channel like I did every day after school, and I watched the May 3rd, 1999 tornado outbreak happen live. Most of what I watched was just the radar screen that they had on the Weather Channel showing the debris ball and everything moving into Oklahoma City. I got the VHS called May's Fury. It was the K4 documentary about the May 3rd tornado. And man, I watched that VHS at least 100 times, no joke. And then my first tornado was an EF0. So my first real tornado experience happened when I was living in Jacksonville, Florida. I was working at a film company, and it was a 9-to-5 job, and I had a second floor office with a window that faced towards the river that runs through downtown Jacksonville. And about, I think, 4 p.m, I could hear thunder, and I looked up and I saw storm clouds. And then I thought I saw something that looked like a cone, but there was this tree right in front of my window. So I didn't have my car that day. I had a bicycle that I rode into work. So I hopped on my bike and I biked down to the river. And as I'm pulling around the bend, there's a water spout less than a quarter mile away, right in the river that I'm biking towards. And that was my first experience seeing any sort of funnel. And I was freaking out. And the riverbank was lined with people. There was tons of people watching it. But I watched it for several more minutes until it dissipated, and then rode my bike back to the office. And by the time I got back, a second funnel was forming, and everyone I was working with had run outside at that point because they heard what was happening. And they were filming this second funnel. And so I grabbed some cameras that were laying around the office and pointed it up out the window. We were in a historic building that had no closets, and it had very like that thin historic glass that's all warped. So my thought was, there's no safe place to hide. If this thing's coming over the office, I'm going to just experience it full on. So I was hanging out the window that was open, filming straight up as this funnel was going over. And it just kind of skirted the office a little bit. It was probably not even 100 feet down the road. And it was sucking up palm fronds off the tree right next to me. And as soon as I knew it had passed by, I ran out the door and looked straight up. And it was the most beautiful blue, deep blue funnel just spinning overhead. And you could see the palm fronds that had been sucked up spinning around. And that was my first tornado experience. And I mean, that sold it for me. After that, there was no way I was not going to chase tornadoes. Up until that point, I had kind of just thought storm chasing was a far off dream. And yeah, maybe someday I'll like pay to go on a tornado safari. But that day I was like, there's no way I'm not going to pursue this as some sort of career. I got to make this work. And
can we change our name to Tornado Safari?
Ooh, checking Twitter and Instagram now. See if that's.
We just wear all khaki and like.
we have to drive around in like these buses that have no canopies and no coverage.
Right.
Did you guys ever look those up when you were younger? The tornado tours. There was one called Tornado Safari. I think. Maybe I just made that up.
Absolutely, I looked those up.
Trademark tornado trackers. If I just made it up. Yeah, I almost dropped $3,000 to go on one. Glad I didn't.
Dang. Thanks for sharing that, Gabe. Any other details that stick out to you about either of those days?
I mean, I don't like to brag, but it is fun to think that my first storm chase was done on a bike. I'm kind of holding on to that one and wearing it as a badge.
That's like Ben Franklin on a horse, chasing the tornado.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Gabe. Two great stories. But this has been Tracker Chat, the podcast within a podcast. We've been the Tornado Trackers, and you can find us on our website at tornadotrackers.org. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. So we're with Minnesota Twins meteorologist Mace Michaels, who also works for Severe Studios. And I want to talk about this because I want to jump to our question of the week, which is going to cover a little bit here this past month. The estate of Corbin Jagger, who was a storm chaser that was killed in 2017 when he was hit by two other storm chasers, Kelly Williamson and Randy Arnall, while chasing. They actually, Kelly and Randy went through a stop sign, struck Corbin, and actually all three of them died. But what happened just recently here is the mother of Corbin Jagger filed a lawsuit not only against the estates of Williamson and Yarnall, but also sued the Weather Channel, who at the time Williamson and Yarnall were chasing for the Weather Channel. They were employed by the Weather Channel because they were doing a series called Storm Wranglers. And the lawsuit talked about how the vehicle that Williamson was in had all these cameras and everything in the dashboard that could have prevented him from seeing, the distractions that all that causes, why they felt the Weather Channel was potentially responsible for encouraging going after these storms and maybe encouraging getting to these storms quicker, etc., while they were going so fast. But my question is this, because Mace, so you worked for Severe Studios. Share with all of us a little bit, because you told me slightly about, you remembered the day of the accident. You remember hearing about it, and tell us what you were doing and how you heard about it.
I believe I was. We were watching the storms of that day, and I'm always in chat with Corey Hartman one way or another. We own a radio station together in Baraboo, Wisconsin, so there may have been as much discussion as that going on as the severe weather of the day. But the chaser community is very, very tight knit. Everybody knows everybody. And Corey right away had sent me a message. It sounds like there was a really bad accident, and I'm not sure who is involved, but I think I know who is involved. And of course, Severe Studios has the platform for streaming, and Kelly streamed on their platform along with other platforms too. I believe he had a YouTube channel and things like that. So, but he used Severe Studios as a streaming platform. So it wasn't hard to find out right away what had happened before it even got out to the rest of the world and to the rest of the chaser community.
Sure. And honestly, that's how I found out about who Kelly was a little bit, was through the streaming through Severe Studios, and I just always realized that, man, he always did seem to be on the storms. He always seemed to be there. But so my question to Mace and the Freaks, all of you, is really do you feel the Weather Channel? Certainly I think Williamson and Yarnall. I think there's a proven history of driving fast, and when you stream your chases, you can't really hide much. And unfortunately, I think that there was some of that was involved too. They couldn't hide that maybe they did go through stop signs, or they did those kinds of things. But I guess my question more is, do you feel the Weather Channel's response? Do you think there's some responsibility from the employer in this case of the series that they were doing? That they were responsible for their driving and the potential death of Corbin Jagger. And Mace, I'll just start with you. I mean, personally, what's your opinion on it? What do you think?
Well, from a legal standpoint, and obviously I'm not a lawyer, but it looks like they were obviously employees of the Weather Channel. That was the first question. Some people are freelance, so they're not directly paid a salary and things like that.
That's what I thought it was. Yeah, right. That's what I thought it was, but I agree. It sounded like they were employees.
Right. Yep. They were employees.
Okay.
I think you will probably end up, side note, you will have less chasers who are direct employees and more that either work through contracted through Severe Studios with Corey or any of the other chaser groups that are out like that, or will contract directly with the Weather Channel, but they won't be employees. So that may be one of the changes you see. That's just my personal opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. The Weather Channel on their responsibility. That's such a tough question to answer. I mean, there's so much in TV. If you've ever worked in TV, you're driven by so many things going on, and knowing many chasers and not naming anybody specifically, you want to be where you want to be and you want to get that shot. And the more you can get that shot, especially in the rare cases, that drives your pocketbook, and it also can help to drive ratings. So there's definitely an indirect responsibility, you have to say, if you just look at it on the surface like that. But it's really tough to say overall. How was the Weather Channel screaming in his ear? Were they saying that? I really doubt it. We need you here. We need you there. I don't think they've ever been like that. Considering what happened 3 years before that in the Oklahoma City and El Reno type case, where they had their own chase vehicles hit, and the night that Tim lost his life and everybody.
Maz, what do you, obviously a TV background for yourself, what do you think? Obviously we don't know all the details, and I'm asking everybody to kind of give me their jury opinion when we don't know all the details and we're not a part of the jury. But from just your opinion standpoint, do you think a TV station, or in this case a Weather Channel, could have some responsibilities there?
Well, first of all, yeah, I understand. First of all, very tragic situation. And our hearts go out to everybody, even all the friends along with the family. And it's hard to dredge all that stuff back up again, but I do understand this is an extremely litigious society we live in. And I think if I look at it from somebody who is a storm chaser, and you're going out storm chasing, inherently there are risks involved in doing that. So there's nothing written that says, yes, I assume risks for doing this. But if there's any kind of liability due to negligence, that changes things just a little bit. I was able to go watch on YouTube the video up to the point of the intersection, and then the video stopped. Mm-hmm. But I watched it that last like 30 seconds over and over, and I'm like, ooh, they are flying. And there's the stop sign, and I don't know if he couldn't see it or what. And people can say one thing like, "Oh, hey, so and so may have been have a history of that." I have no idea if they had a history of blowing through stop signs or not. So I'm not here to talk about that. But it's true. I did look up. I just went to a website like nolo.com, which was a site that deals with litigical things, and it says if you are an employee, you're held directly responsible. And then if there was a situation,
employer or an employee,
if you are an employee of an employer, the employer then is held. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry if I said that the wrong way. And if then there are some people who said, well, the Weather Channel knew that they had a history of something. If that were the case, then you get the negligent side as well, and things step up. It's such a sad situation all the way around. I'm sure if everybody could go back, everybody would have done things differently. And it's just a situation that's just so sad. But I could see the lawsuit going through. I don't know about the exact dollar amount. I saw the amount they were looking for, and I don't know if they'll get that or not. But in this litigious society that we live in right now, I have a feeling it's going to go through.
Morgan, what do you know about the situation? And I guess my question also to you is what do you think might come out of this? You've got a communications background, and Mace talked a little bit about where obviously the direction that something like this can create. But what do you know about it, and where do you think this might lead to?
Well, so my thoughts are basically a combination of what they just said is basically, it's part of everybody, like the consumer, how the viewers, want more, and also a part of the legality of the employer and who's responsible for it. But I think as far as outcomes go, I think that I don't know. I think that the weather.
If you're running the Weather Channel right now,
yeah.
what would something like this do? What decisions would you make moving forward, knowing you just got sued because a storm chaser that you employed ran a stop sign and killed somebody and themselves?
Well, the first thing that I learned in my crisis communication class, Dr. Holt would be very proud of me to say this, but is to apologize. And, really apologize to the families and the friends for, whatever had happened, if they were even at fault, or even if they weren't at fault, apologize and just kind of make sure that never happens again, and just get out there in the public, so that people aren't seeing this information, seeing that there's a lawsuit against the Weather Channel, and saying oh, well, I can't trust the Weather Channel, if they're sending people out to basically, get killed. So I think if the Weather Channel can just go out and say something about this topic. I don't know if they have. I've just read the article you shared with us, but I think that would be the best move.
Yeah. Okay.
As far as whoever's doing PR for the Weather Channel.
Start with that.
Hear me out. Yeah.
You look at this after the fact now, and you think, you're asking the question, what would you do differently? I wouldn't have any employees in such a high risk situation. Now that you see that, it's well, that could happen, and this is what could happen all the way around to the corporation itself of the Weather. And I like the Weather Channel. I grew up watching it, still watch it, etc. But from litigious side, I'm looking at it going, boy, you've got to insulate yourself as a company from lawsuits. And I could see, nope, not going to have any employees. You've got to find a way to buffer your corporation from, as every company does. Every company has to find a way, because everybody's looking to sue everybody. By the way, don't sue us for any of this stuff tonight we're talking about.
MJ, what are your thoughts on it, and how do you think this might change the storm chasing industry?
I mean, I think I'm right in there with Maz, and maybe what Mace said a little bit too, is that it is, I think it changes it whether or not the lawsuit completes with the Weather Channel being culpable, for any of it, because it's going to make people concerned about having those employees, right? I think it's going to change that dramatically. You're not going to have that. Now, I don't know if that means, how far does that go, right? Does that go to the organizations that these chasers belong to, or that they, work with or around or through? If it's not a Weather Channel or an AccuWeather or somebody like that, I don't know how far it goes, but it's going to change things from that standpoint. If the lawsuit finishes with the Weather Channel being found responsible, that's a precedent that's going to, continue on. And I think that's going to make a lot of companies look at what they do around storm chasing and other things that put people in harm's way. So,
Mace, what do you foresee this having any changes to how Severe Studios and Corey operates things?
And there's one thing I was going to add before I even answer that question. I believe the Weather Channel was owned by a different company before in 2017, if I remember right.
Yes, they were the TV side. Yeah.
So right. So I don't even know who. I'm going to assume the lawsuit is against that group as opposed to the current group, but I can't say for sure. I haven't seen the paperwork, so that even makes it, I don't want to say more interesting. That's a bad way to put it, but it makes the litigation side more interesting too, to how the current operation will operate down the road here. But so to answer your question here from kind of on this side, how it will change things, I don't believe it'll change much differently from the aspect of what Corey would do on the Severe Studio side. Very few of his chasers are under a direct contract for that type of situation where they're chasing directly for somebody or for him. Most of them are doing it in some type of, and I'm again on the radio side, so I don't know how the contracts are drawn up and how things are done. So I shouldn't even be fully saying, but I know that most of it's at a more of an arm's length. It's not a direct relationship. You're not working for Corey directly as an employee.
Got it. Well, let's do, we're always looking for your input on it. So if you're listening to the show or watching the show, feel free to drop us your feedback. You can email us at questions@stormfrontfreaks.com. Let us know what you think, or you can find us on Facebook or Twitter. Just look up Stormfront Freaks and you'll find us there, and let us know what you think. But quick question, Mace. How can listeners find you on social media? Where are you at?
I'm pretty easy to find. Twitter, it's Mace Michaels. Same thing on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm Mace Michaels. Just search for me there. You'll find me.
Wow, you must have a unique name or something.
That's where, Mace is my real middle name. So, but I've been always called that as a kid. So it just kind of stuck, and it worked great for TV. The Michaels part was the thing that was made up by a general manager years ago, and it stuck. Here I am 25, 30 years later.
Is that legal? Is that legal?
Now, Michaels has got nothing to do with me at all legally at all. Nothing. No. The stage
it's not even
name.
Your middle name?
No, Mace is my middle name.
Okay. Because a lot of times it would be, you take your middle name, add an S, and that becomes your last name in TV.
Sure.
So.
Rogers, my first name, and in Grand Rapids, I was Mace Rogers. Maybe that's why you don't remember.
That's why.
There you go.
No, I remember you as Mace Windu, I believe.
That's funny. All right.
It's a little too pale for that.
So let's do that. So that's the sound. It is time for our lightning round. This is our game show of flashy questions for our guest. We always invite everybody to play along as we go. Mace, tonight we're going to play a little game. This is actually weather related.
Okay.
A lot of times it's not weather related. Tonight it is. We're going to call this lightning high or low. So lightning high or low. So basically what this is I'm going to go through some National Weather Service lightning statistics. And each of the statistics comes with a number. And the number I give you is not the correct number. The actual number is going to be either higher or lower than the number I give you. Okay? So I've got a few questions here, and it's related to lightning because obviously you work for the Minnesota Twins, and they'll continue to play ball even if it's lightning outside, obviously. So
Sounds like a lawsuit.
So I figured this, this would be appropriate. But here we go. So lightning high or low, and freaks, you're welcome to kind of, let them know what you think. If you want to give them tips or hints, you're welcome to do that. But first one, Mace, first one. So lightning can strike as much as 12 miles from a storm. So is the real distance higher or lower than 12 miles?
Higher.
That is correct. The real distance from the National Weather Service, it can strike as much as 15 miles from the storm. All right, so we'll keep that in mind when you count to 3 after the thunder or after the lightning strike. You hear the thunder, right? That should take shelter. All right, in the U.S., there's an estimated 10 million strikes each year. Is the actual number higher or lower than 10 million?
Ooh, that is a tough question.
Freaks, freaks can help out? What do you
million.
think?
I'm
10 million
lower.
strikes each year in the U.S.
That seems like a lot. I would say lower.
So you're going to say lower?
Yes.
That is incorrect.
Really?
There's an estimated 25 million strikes each year.
cow.
And half of
In the
those
US.
are near the Metrodome.
Metrodome
not
doesn't
there
exist
anymore.
anymore.
I know.
All right, good. All right, number 3. So you're 1 for 2. Air around a lightning strike is heated to 100,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Is the actual number higher or lower than 100,000 degrees Fahrenheit?
What is that number 2? And I've looked at it. And
Don't say number 2 on the air. You
no. T-O, not T-W-O.
Oh.
Man. So 100,000 degrees?
100,000. Is it higher or lower than 100,000
Lower.
degrees?
Lower.
You're going to say lower?
Yes.
That would be correct. It's 50,000 degrees, which is still hotter than the
Still
surface
pretty
of the
warm.
sun. Yep, but 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, 2 for 3. Next question. The average flash of lightning could light a 100-watt light bulb for 2 months.
See, I was going to say higher till you added the 2-month part. Now that makes it hard.
Okay, is the
I was like,
actual...
yes, higher.
So it can light a 100-watt light bulb. Is the actual length of time higher or lower than 2 months?
I'll still say higher.
You're going to say higher?
Yes.
That's correct. It's 3
Yeah.
months, so it could light a 100-watt light bulb for 3
Well.
months. I mean, that's still, an extra 30 days. That's still pretty good.
Geez,
All
I
right.
didn't learn that one in Met 101 years ago. Darn.
All right, you're rolling. You're rolling. Here we go. Thunder. Thunder can be heard up to 20 miles away. Is the actual distance higher or lower than 20 miles?
Lower.
What?
That's incorrect. Thunder can be heard up to 25 miles away.
25? Okay.
Really?
Yeah,
What are you,
okay.
a dog with hearing or something? My
Could be.
gosh.
I don't know. All right, moving on. You're still doing well here. We got 2 more. Lightning kills an average of 50 people in the U.S. each year. Is the actual number of people killed on average every year from lightning higher or lower than 50?
I think it's higher.
Say higher.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good.
That is incorrect. It is 47, so it's
Morgan.
lower.
Morgan, did you know?
okay. So I did pull up my
You're cheating.
severe weather climatology notes from Dr. Rogers' class.
Oh,
last
okay.
semester.
Yeah, well, that's
Oh.
cheating. So that's not
Well,
fair.
it didn't work out, did it?
Well, no, obviously not.
No,
You took bad
obviously
notes.
not.
What's your problem? All right.
No.
So here's the last
The
question.
graphics are from 05.
Oh,
This
sue
is
the
the last
professor. Sue the
Yeah,
professor.
take it up.
Yeah,
These are from the National Weather Service. Take it up with them.
Okay,
All right, so here we
sorry.
go. So from 2009 to 2019, this year, so over the last 10 years, we've had 272 lightning fatalities, and 75% were male. Is the actual percentage of male victims higher or lower than 75?
Higher.
And
Yeah.
why would you say that?
Well, having lived in Florida and seeing all the guys out on the golf course all the time.
Okay, so you'd say higher than 75%?
Yeah.
And you would be correct. It's 79%. 79% are male. So congratulations. I think we had 7. You got 5 of the 7.
5.
So well done.
Thank you.
Well done, Mace. All right. Well, thanks for playing along. That was always fun. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to go ahead. We're going to take our final break. And you can listen to, if you happen to be catching our edited podcast, you can catch Tornado Talk segment. We're sharing the story of the 1974 Xenia, Ohio F5 tornado. And we'll be right back with some weather fools as well.
It was a most unusual day. From the west, a cold front, riding in high on the jet stream. From the Gulf of Mexico, a low mass of moist, warm, unstable air heading northward. And when they collided, it became the day of the killer tornadoes.
That clip is from a 1978 documentary of the April 3rd and 4th, 1974 super outbreak. 148 tornadoes in 24 hours. 95 were rated F2 or stronger, and 30 of those were given a rating of F4 or F5. 15 tornadoes occurred simultaneously at the height of the event. 13 states were affected across the eastern U.S. from the Great Lakes area down toward the Deep South. There were over 2,500 miles of damage path, 335 were killed, and more than 6,000 were injured. This Twister Tale looks at one of the strongest tornadoes of the outbreak and the deadliest. It was rated F5 and devastated Xenia, Ohio. This tornado developed 5 miles southwest of Xenia near Bellbrook in Greene County. It moved quickly to the northeast through Xenia, destroying or damaging about one-half of the city. The population at the time was 25,000. There were public reports of 2, possibly 3 separate funnels. The Arrowhead subdivision was leveled. 300 homes were destroyed and 2,100 were damaged. Most of the downtown business area was destroyed. Nearby Wilberforce University and also Central State University sustained major damage to several campus and residential buildings. The Xenia High School was destroyed. A furniture manufacturing company, most of a foundry, and a machine company were demolished. The tornado continued into Clark County, where several farm buildings, some homes, and mobile homes sustained damage. The total path length of this tornado, just over 31 miles. President Richard Nixon visited Xenia a week following the tornado, and he stated, quote, "It's the worst disaster I've ever seen." Over 1,100 injuries occurred due to the Xenia tornado, and there were 32 fatalities. On the official memorial dedicated to the lives lost, there are 34 names listed. 2 Ohio Air National Guardsmen who were deployed to help during this disaster were killed on April 17th when a fire swept through their temporary barracks in a furniture store. Their names were added to the memorial. Per the Storm Prediction Center, this event continues to be in the top 10 of costliest tornadoes on record. From Thomas Grzoulis in Significant Tornadoes, quote, "This was the most publicized tornado of the day and perhaps the most well-studied tornado in history from a wind engineering perspective." According to OhioHistoryCentral.org, bumper stickers that appeared within days of the tornado stated, quote, "Xenia lives." By April 3, 1975, 80% of the destroyed homes and 40% of the businesses had been rebuilt in Xenia. All structures were repaired or rebuilt by 1984. You can read more about this event on our website at tornadotalk.com. All of our summaries include detailed descriptions of the event, maps, images, videos, and newspaper clips. Share your tornado history stories with us. Go to our contact page on our website or reach out to us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
That's your cue.
Alrighty, folks. It is time for, you guessed it, Weather Fools. Of course, it's the Fools of Weather, so any idiotic thing that happens in a weather situation. We've got something that a viewer sent in from us. MJ, would you be so kind to share your screen?
I can do that. And this is shared by Parker Owens, who's one of our faithful viewers of our show and listeners, I assume, too. And he shared this with us, and I have to do that. And I'll play this, and you go ahead and take a look, and you can watch this. You'll watch this umbrella, and it has a platform, and some guys get on it. It's windy, and away he goes. You got to see it again. He gets on it. It's like a platform, and he rides it right up and out. And it's pretty amazing. It happened in Turkey, and so you want to make sure that you go and take a look at that from our show notes.
I wish that we knew where he ended up.
I do too, because you can't tell. You sort of see them go off, and then they stop.
Whoever was filming that freaked out, obviously, and stopped recording, or we're in a litigious society that they're like, okay, I'm going to cut it there because I don't want to show what happens after.
Man, that was crazy,
wasn't it?
It's Mary Poppins, baby. Mary Poppins. Look, y'all, Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins, a turkey. All right, Phil, you got one?
I do have one. I don't need to share my screen for this because it's really a story, but it was actually a day I was out chasing, March 14th. I was out in southeastern Indiana, but there was a tornado came through Paducah, Kentucky. There's actually a National Weather Service office in Paducah, but what had happened was, this is Lynx Services. So this is an employer. So here we are talking about employers again and legal issues, but Lynx Services, it's a call center. They basically employ people to take phone calls for insurance claims, for insurance claims purposes. But so here's one of these offices. It's all cubicles, and it's everybody next to everybody with their headsets taking phone calls, right? Well, this is March 14th in Paducah. Tornado warning. Tornadoes are coming through. And of course, these folks aren't allowed to bring their phones to their stations. So they don't know what's going on other than they can look out the window and see it looks kind of nasty out there. And there was I'm talking a little bit about the story. The unnamed employee. So here's what happened. 22 people filed an OSHA complaint against the company. But an unnamed employee claimed they went inside and told a supervisor about the warnings because they got up, I think they went to the bathroom, and they saw something on one of the manager's computers. And they said something to the manager, and the employee was told, quote, "Just take your calls, you'll be all right, just continue working." During a tornado warning.
Nice.
Okay, just keep taking calls, don't worry about it. And so they filed an OSHA complaint, and all this is happening, but I want to share the response that the company came back with. Solera was the parent company. They care first and foremost for the safety and well-being of our people and our communities. Although we have protocols in place to address these situations, we took immediate action when questions about safety procedures in the wake of the tornado activity were brought to our attention, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously they didn't, but here's an example of some manager who really maybe has no idea what a tornado warning really means, thinks it's a watch or vice versa. And just said, keep working, we're going to be okay. And there's literally tornado went through Paducah. So
Weather Fool.
Yeah, Link Services is my hashtag Weather Fool, Morgan.
All right, and as always, you can always find our Weather Fools on our website.
As always, you can always find.
Yes,
always.
Yes. I was hoping no one caught that.
Nobody did.
You can always find our Weather Fools at our website, stormfrontfreaks.com, or your show notes on our show notes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey,
you can tell I'm new at this.
I'll tell you what, we just have to make sure you just maybe have a shot of beer when you start the show, and not a can of beer when you start the show. We learn everybody's tolerance, and that's okay. That's kind of how we figure it out. We learn what it takes.
I want to talk to you about Weather Fool.
And by the way, we are episode 76 if you happen to be looking for those show notes.
Feels like episode 1.
MJ, let's
it's like
check
4
out.
for me.
That's true.
Yeah.
Give her a break. Your honeymoon period's over. I mean, you get one, and that's about it. So, MJ, let's check our freak fan box.
All right, in the fan box today, Chris White was checking in, said listening to our show with Ada Monson last couple of weeks ago. He says one takeaway was that a just-in-time supply chain doesn't work for major disasters like hurricanes or, Hurricane Maria. FEMA needs supply depots similar to what the Department of Defense does. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thought.
Good idea.
Thanks, Chris, for sharing that. And that's what we got in the fan box. Always, we'll take your questions at stormfrontfreaks.com or on Twitter at stormfrontfreak or on Facebook. Search for Stormfront Freaks.
That's good. That was like a Morgan statement. We'll take your questions at questions.
Yes,
at
stormfrontfreaks.com. Yeah, okay.
It was a little bit, but I had to.
Not going to live it down.
All right, so that just about does it for this episode of Stormfront Freaks podcast. Thanks for listening or watching. Before I reveal our next guest, if you enjoy the show, do us a favor and leave a great review on your podcast app. And don't forget, please subscribe to the show by hitting your podcast app subscribe button. It works just like a magazine or newspaper subscription. It's free, and it assures the latest show gets delivered right to your podcast inbox the moment we release it. So I do want to say definitely a special thanks to Mace Michaels tonight. Mace, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And taking the time, man. You were great and a lot of fun to have on. So we'll have to have you on again. But our next episode, so it's going to be in 2 weeks. We're going to be recording on April 18th as part of our Coast to Coast with Your Favorite TV Meteorologist series. We're going to be with Denver's Fox KDVR's Jessica LaBelle. So Jessica will be with us. And if you'd like to watch the recording live at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, check out our YouTube channel by searching Stormfront Freaks. So for Maz, MJ, Morgan, our intern, and Mace, I'm going to go ahead and signal the all clear, and we'll catch you guys next time. Good night, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Stormfront Freaks podcast. Find our bi-weekly show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Watch our shows on YouTube and Oklahoma Weather Tracker TV. For show notes, additional information about this episode, as well as past and upcoming shows, videos, photos, merchandise, and more, visit our website at stormfrontfreaks.com. While you're there, check out our live interactive storm chaser radar provided by our friends at zoomradar.com. If you would like to contact us with questions or make comments about the show, shoot us an email to questions@stormfrontfreaks.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Search for Stormfront Freaks. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time and tell a friend about the Stormfront Freaks podcast.
Right now, it's pretty
MJ,
windy.
You gotta show your screen though, because we're seeing Morgan.
Oh,
There
sorry.
you go. No, MJ, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm trying. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
You gotta click. on
Okay,
that
you know
view.
what? Let's start this segment over again.
God,
You're
okay.
like my
Thank
grandparents
God,
on the
please.
internet.
All right, we'll
See?
cut that whole
See,
God.
it's not that easy, is it? Huh?
Wrong. Okay, yeah. So